There are places where thousands of dead animals are kept inside drawers for decades. Collected, sometimes killed, and preserved, they are kept with as much data and information as possible. But these places are not from a horror movie. They are usually called natural history museums or collections, and they are fundamental for science and research. Or that is what the science community says.
So a museum is a repository where we keep specimens of plants and animals or their parts for safekeeping that we can use in research, teaching, and outreach education.
Is like a library of plants and animals. And if you care about biodiversity, if you care about knowing how many plants and animals are in a place or protecting them, you have to have a record of what those things are and be able to identify them.
But let's go deeper. Why are these collections important? Why do we need to catch and keep specimens in the best shape possible?
Collections are used for a lot of reasons. For our purposes, we often are teaching with these things so that students that are taking the biodiversity courses or other courses trying to learn about concepts in ecology and evolution, they have to know about the biodiversity, but we also use these animals and plants to reinforce particular concepts in ecology and evolution.
You can get DNA from them, you can look at how big or how little they were in the past, and really, 100 years ago, there wasn't the kind of photographic technology that there is now. So especially from long ago in the past, having the real thing can answer totally different questions or questions that you absolutely couldn't answer without the real thing.
I was the TA for the field ornithology class for 3 years, and that involves heavy use of the specimen collection, specifically to teach students about the diversity of birds that are found throughout Nevada and how to identify them. Diversity from like little tiny northern pygmy owls, which is our smallest owl here in northern Nevada, to great horned owls, which is the largest species of owl in northern Nevada. A lot of these animals are hard to find in the wild, but having a collection like this allows students to have a really close, hands-on interaction, learn all sorts of characteristics about the animals that they wouldn't be able to get from just observing them in the wild.
Although they are important, creating these collections implies taking animals from their habitats and keeping them in the museums forever. This is an idea that can be ethically challenging even for the same scientists that collect them.
For, I guess, about 8 years, I was the curator of vertebrates at the University of Colorado Natural History Museum. The main animals that I collected were snakes. So, I'd go out and literally catch snakes just with my hands most of the time. For putting them in a collection, you euthanize them, usually with a lethal injection of some sort, and then you preserve them in ethanol. I also did things with other organisms like birds and mammals. I think there was a little bit of conflict for me at the time, but it was more kind of later that I started kind of feeling more negatively about that. Now, like even when I see a snake, I don't know, it used to be almost reflexive for me to try to catch it, maybe show it to my kids or something. And now I mostly just leave them alone. I don't even want to disturb them.
The good thing is that now collections have more regulations and technological advances are thriving.
Shooting almost any kind of animal could be for sport. And so it used to be that lots of animals would be killed, and really better that they come to a natural history museum, right? Like, we can still learn from them, we can be respectful of them if we have them in a natural history museum.
Maybe 100, 200 years ago, people were collecting in a kind of unregulated fashion. And so it's possible that there were population declines of particular species in particular areas. But nowadays, everything is strictly enforced at the state and federal level. So anyone who wants to collect, let's say, a fox, is going to have to first get approval from the university, then get approval from the state, then get approval from the federal government, and there's going to be oversight so that there'll be an annual report and everybody knows what was collected, when it was collected, and the justification.
It is very clear then that these collections are important for research and education. But is it really necessary to catch the animal and preserve it? Can technology and other techniques be used instead?
You could probably do some things with photographs alone, but they're going to be pretty limited. You won't get this sort of three-dimensional shape, right, of an object. You won't get maybe good coloration unless each picture was perfectly taken with a color standard. You certainly can't get things like DNA, protein, dietary information, the stable isotopes.
It allows us to have environmental pollution samples. So if a bird is eating something with environmental pollutant in it, we can measure that and how it's changed over time. So some of our early specimens are from the 1950s. And so if we can compare those really old specimens to now specimens collected in 2022, that gives really valuable long-term comparison data. But now with modern collection, we can collect sometimes in a different way that we don't have to kill the whole bird, or we can collect a bird that died of natural causes otherwise and still get some of that really valuable data.
But besides the bigger objective, are there other things to consider? Are we thinking in each animal or only in human interests?
So it's not so much that I question that collections can be beneficial, but it's more just people kind of come in with this attitude that the individual animal lives maybe are not that important. That I think the impact of collections on animal populations is really minuscule compared to all these other things that humans do all the time. So even though the impact is small, is it still okay to be sort of going out there and intentionally killing things?
In the end, it doesn't matter if the researchers have mixed feelings towards collections. They still think they are important and they still collect.
It's going to be a little bit hypocritical, which I admit it's hypocritical. So I still collect insects. So although I don't feel great about going out and collecting insects and killing them, it sort of doesn't bother me on the level that, say killing a bird or a snake would at this point. So a lot of it is based on, the sort of cuteness. Mm-hmm. I mean, people value cute or attractive animals more than ones that they find repulsive, say.
There's actually citizen science efforts where citizens are going out, collecting all those bodies and keeping them and preserving them and putting them into collections like these, which is really sad but good. So it's like unintentional taking them out of the wild, right? But making the best of that unfortunate event.
How does the future look? Will collections be replaced?
Well, we've been trying to digitize the collections so that anyone around the world could have access to all the information associated with these specimens, and they could even access pictures of the specimen.
For me, there's a lot of really good community scientist platforms where anyone can say that they've observed a certain bird or a mammal. And so iNaturalist is one. If you like birds, you use eBird.
One that I'll just highlight is one that's run through the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It's the Macaulay Library that collects video, audio, and photographs of a lot of species, but really focuses on birds and allows even citizen scientists to contribute. And so I will say that those types of data collections are maybe not taking the place of some of these natural history collections, but allows us to use that data to answer all sorts of amazing questions too.
And a very positive thing is that, people I think are more aware of, that it's a potentially bad thing to be killing animals. So I think, there's a lot less collecting, especially of vertebrates. I can imagine this future where there's a lot of awareness of the negative aspect of just, this intentional killing of animals.